Greetings once again to everyone on the other side. Join us in the city of Jerusalem. Laura, how are we today?
Very well. With this beautiful day, it's perfect for a little walk. So we hope that you are doing well too.
Yes, and this video is going to be all the videos are special, but this one is going to be a little more special than the others. Because at the time of recording, we are in a period of rest, of peace. After a few days, almost a month and a half of intense times here in the Middle East. The last video we made exactly in this same place. In fact, we're gonna take the same route. We were under threats of war, under constant missile threats, right? So today we're going to show, and we're gonna take the same route we did at a different time, but also in a different situation. We're probably gonna see open shops, people moving around. Let's see what we find, because we'll be right there with you. And we're also going to remember something interesting, we're also going to talk about the Bible, where the Bible also reminds us. Similar stories like the one Israel is going through today also happened in the past.
Exactly. These stories also come to tell us that there are other examples of similar situations that have already happened. And believe it or not, they are written in the Bible. So would it be a user manual? That's what we always say. Join us. We're going to try to take the same route we did the other day, so you yourselves will be witnesses and you'll be able to draw your own conclusions about the difference between the 2 days.
Exactly, that's what we're going to do.
Well, just a few days ago, we had this same situation. I don't know if you remember, but it was at night at a time when there was no sunlight. And well, we saw that there was very, very little traffic. And now things are falling back into place very quickly, very, very, very quickly. So join us because we're going to use the same entrance as well. The way we're going in now is the same one we used the other day via Yafo Yafa. Jope, Jope, whatever you want to call it.
Do you remember, Laura, that a few days ago when we made this video a little later at night, we didn't have this view? And it's not because it was nighttime, it's just that we were going through tense days.
Exactly.
And what we had here were like police booths, both on the right and on the left. They didn't allow groups to enter. The groups couldn't get in. We managed to get in, remember? Because it was just the two of us, but groups couldn't get in and security was very tight. In fact, at one point when we left, there was a man, an Orthodox religious man, who was coming with one of those supermarket carts. One of those with two small wheels you take to the supermarket.
The little shopping cart.
Yes, and so they made him stop. I mean, if you're an Orthodox religious person, you don't pose a threat, right? But they made him stop to check his cart. The police checked what he had inside. Why? Because you can't trust anyone right now, can you? And so the law is exactly the same for everyone. And it's not that the stores were closed, because we were at a relatively early hour, and we said that the stores here closed between 10 and 11 at night. And we were there early.
So what you mean is that it was during store hours?
It was business hours.
It was during regular hours, not early morning or late at night. Bueno,
Anyway, here in the old city in Jerusalem, we will always see police officers. We will always see soldiers, because let's remember that it's one of the cities where it is necessary to have control.
There is always a lot of tension here. You always have to be cautious because you never know when, how the day will end, how a new day will begin. So you always have to be under stricter control than others.
Yes, anyway, having police officers and soldiers doesn't mean the place is unsafe. On the contrary, they make it safer for you. Because if you are planning to do something bad or steal a purse or something, you think twice because of all the security around you. So that's a good thing. A lot of people get scared when they see so many police officers and so many soldiers. Tourists get scared here because there isn't as much security in their countries, of course. But well, here it's good. And let's also remember that military service is voluntary. So in some way you need, no, sorry, it's mandatory.
Mandatory?
So you need to give work to all the soldiers you have, right? Well, look at the difference. Now there are several stores open, not all of them, but quite a few, right?
Yes, exactly. Edu, can you remind us which quarter this is?
Here we are at the boundary of the Christian quarter. See, here, right there, the Christian quarter. There you get to the famous Holy Sepulchre, the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, which was made official a few days ago, remember? Holy Week behind closed doors, the Easter Sunday service for Catholics behind closed doors, of course.
Without the event, as is customary.
Massive, yes. And so here next to us in this direction behind all these shops is the Jewish quarter. And this is the street, one of the main streets that goes directly toward the area around the wall, which is called Yafo, exactly the same name as the old one.
Entrance to the gate?
We remember that there were 8 gates, of which 7 are open, and one of them is kind of the main one, the Yafo gate, which is the most direct one. It's also one of the easiest ways to reach the wall. You're less likely to get lost.
Yes.
But you can still feel it in the air. What, Lore? Are the scents there? If the scents could get through there.
About what we're saying now.
Yes, about
How do you say it?
no saffron essences.
Yes, also essences and also condiments.
Condiments, yes, tablinum.
Condiments and also incense, those things like essential oils or things that they also make with, or what they put in candles to create scents.
We also remember, Lore, that we are about in this recess period where people are also getting encouraged to go out.
Of course. The people, the audience. You mean?
Everything we're hearing is in the local people's language, right?
Yes. Notice that a lot of them already have their whole business fully set up. Everything outside and also inside, you know, it's not just that they open the doors, but they also hang the, shall we go?
Lori?
All the gracias.
The blankets, all the tablecloths, the tallets, all the things we have hanging that they display. So it's like they literally set up their stalls, I mean, completely, waiting to be able to sell on this day. But there are others that are the complete opposite, that are still closed. And it's very clean, I mean.
They're very clean. Very, very clean. Very clean. There's not so much shouting from vendors.
Yes.
Competition between the stores. But let's remember, these people also need to live for a month and a half.
How long can they keep their business, their store closed, of course? When they make a living from this.
This is one way to reach the wall. They can go that way. The yellow sign says so, since we're taking the same route.
On that yellow sign, if you want to zoom in, it says Kotel. Kotel is the wall. So that's a path. Did you tell him?
No, thank you, thank you.
But why are we taking another way then if it said we had to go that way?
Because we're gonna take exactly the same route we did the other day. So, where we said we split from the Christian quarter, which is actually also a mix with the Arab quarter. It's just that all 4 quarters are here.
Well, we've already shown it several times in the videos. Many of the residents had already seen the photo of the old city and the divisions.
This is where the Jewish quarter starts, see? Where we have this... How do you know?
A person who doesn't understand, how do you know that the Jewish quarter starts on that side and not on this side where we live?
Well,
Look, but there's an arrow pointing to it.
There's nothing that tells you. Number one is this arch that reminds you of biblical stories. You have all those biblical stories here. Okay? For example, here's Moses in Egypt. Do you see him? The Nile River?
Yes, that's true. Ah, that's true. Now I see it.
The baby there? Yes, yes. Okay. Here you go, down there, Noah, the covenant.
Oh, look at Noah's Ark.
Okay. Here. What do we have here?
We can have what's it called? When Abraham was going to kill Isaac, to offer Isaac as a sacrifice.
There's an animal up there, like a bird, right?
No,
Ah, yes, yes, the little lamb.
like a little lamb.
Yes, the little lamb and the sacrifice.
And Isaac's little eyes.
They represent the little animal above as an angel, which is the angel that's saying, don't kill.
This is another. When the angel told him, he said,
Stay your hand, stop it, because I have already provided for you, and here is the lamb.
the lamb that is there it is.
So from there, notice that it's very narrow. That's the Arab neighborhood. And here begins the Jewish neighborhood. How can you tell? The images, the letters, more images that are related to soldiers. Talent everywhere. And also something we can't erase is this, that you also notice because of the mezuzot.
Exactly.
And here it is. You'll notice by the mezuzahs on the door. Another clue. Also,
We're going to understand those signs and everything. They're mostly there for signaling, but the person who lives here in any of these rooms already knows where their room starts and where the next one begins. I mean, the sign is just there to inform tourists, but it doesn't give too many details, like, well, look at a map and, well, things will be a little clearer for you. The other day, I don't know if you remember, they were here and we were alone walking around.
we were alone. And now? Something that always, for us, I don't know, at least it reminds us, and we always see this, right? The thing about the little kids walking alone through the city of Jerusalem. And it reminds you of Zechariah, the prophecy of Zechariah. Ah,
Yes,
we were here. We did this with the camera, too.
yes.
We remember the wall.
The wall was so wide.
We show this map. And we show precisely the story of Isaiah. That Isaiah. He is speaking precisely in the fortified city. Something that just... we wanted to share. Of exactly how the era can be compared to the previous one. Yes, exactly, to what's happening now.
But we're realizing this now,
Yes, of course.
that we just read the same thing. Because actually, we hadn't realized that it was exactly the same part we talked about the other day,
Exactly.
which is what this sign says, right? Exactly.
What we had talked about. Well, look, here it is for those who are students of the Bible, so you can write it down and study everything we're going to share with you in today's video. 2 Chronicles chapter 32, verses 2 to 5. In the book of Isaiah, chapter 22, verse 10, and then we are going to read something to you from the book of 2 Kings. There you have the whole story expanded from chapter 18 to chapter 19, okay? And precisely this wall is the wall from the time of the reconstruction during Hezekiah's era, but not by Hezekiah himself. Sorry, I mean when Isaiah was standing here, and then he was sent to deliver good news, so to speak.
To Hezekiah.
Right?
Exactly. But we'll talk about it in a little bit.
Yes, I was telling you something about the kids.
The little kids.
About the reminder from the book of Zechariah, which says that they asked the prophet when Jerusalem was destroyed, "Why are you happy?" And then the prophet said at one point that Jerusalem would have people again. We're watching the Bible unfold before our eyes.
Lore.
That its people would live long.
It's true.
Let's see. That's what the prophet said. And look, in less than, what? 50 meters.
Yes, it's true.
The prophecy in front of us?
The children and the elderly.
He said there would be people living to a ripe old age who would walk through its streets, and that children would also run around its streets. Thank you. When Jerusalem was destroyed, he was prophesying the return of Zion. That is, the return of the Jews back home again. We pause there, if I'm not mistaken, at this menorah.
Regarding the topic of children, it's always very common to see that, for example, they send children to run an errand. Well, not just here, but in general, they always send at least 2 little kids. The brother and the little sister are always together, one older, one younger, to remember the way and to remember what they have to buy and so on. So it's you see that very often.
Exactly. Well, look, Laura, how about we sit there for a little while and explain the story we wanted to tell? Either there or in the shade or somewhere else. We'll explain something really quickly, open the Bibles, and then we'll go to the area by the wall.
The other little part.
We mentioned the verse from Hezekiah about what we were seeing with the elderly man, the lady next to him, the children running around, but we didn't say where it's written. Can we read it?
We can read it.
Yes, let's read it now to prevent people searching elsewhere. Thanks.
This is in Zechariah 8, verses 4 and 5, which says, "This is what Jehovah of armies has said. Elderly men and women will still dwell in the streets of Jerusalem, each with their cane in their hand, because of the length of their days. And the streets of the city will be filled with boys and girls playing in them."
Well, that's a topic for another video, honestly, because like you said, it kind of gives you, in a way...
I got a little chill just now when you were reading that. When you said that in such a small space, we saw both things together.
Both verses, 4 and 5.
Yes.
Exactly.
The elders and the young people.
Yes, yes. And well, it's not that it scares you. It's not that it makes you afraid. It simply gives you a reverent fear of God because you say God fulfills what he says.
In the end, even that tiny detail also comes true. Not only by seeing how a country becomes established, how it progresses, how it builds its entire system, and not just the big things, but even the smallest things, even the human being, tiny as it is, God also takes into account.
Yes. Well, everyone who watched that little bit of video has just witnessed it. I think we've already done a big part of everything. I think God is already speaking to many of you just with that little bit, right? And surely that video will stay up there and will be a witness for many more generations. That God remains faithful no matter what happens, and God continues to be faithful. Well, actually, we are in this period of the peace process where a lot of people are starting to ask questions, and doubts are starting, and conspiracy theories are starting to come up. What will happen? There are channels out there telling you to do this, do that, do the other thing. And so there are many people, even people who write to us feeling sad because in their congregations, they don't talk much about the times we are living in. And she says, just today I was reading a message from someone who wrote to us. They write and write and write to us. And when she goes and asks her leaders, let's talk about Israel, her leaders tell her, no, it's better not to touch on that topic right now. But it's because it's complicated. It's not easy.
That's the word I was going to tell you.
Israel is very complicated. It's very complicated and better. Better if you're not well endowed. Is it bad? It's not that I'm uninterested in talking, but I don't have the authority to say that. There are probably things I don't know, and I'd rather avoid trouble. Possibly also out of fear of God. I'm not justifying every case. I think it's important to talk about this time because it's a time that needs to be understood.
But, well, God doesn't leave any loose ends, and thank God we're here to
help a little regarding that. And with the little bit of light we have too, because we don't have all the light, the little bit we do have, we want to share it with you. And here we just want to make this brief aside. On this tour we're taking through the city of Jerusalem. Because right now, at this moment, we find ourselves we're in this huge state of uncertainty. This 2-week period is broken continuously. Could it be that something is being cooked up behind the scenes? And Israel is being denied entry into that room when they were initially invited to attack and clean up. Now it's like they're being pushed out. That's how it feels here. That's what the people understand. There are a lot of people here with confused and divided thoughts in Israel. But the vast majority agree on one thing, that if this month and a half ends this way, it wasn't worth it at all. And someone summed it up by saying what we did was just mow the lawn, because in reality, the grass grows back since we didn't pull out the root. So we might ask, what does the Bible say about this? There isn't anything specific that talks about this particular time. At least not in this conflict, because this is just another regional conflict. It's not Ezekiel 38. It's not Ezekiel 39. It's not Jeremiah 49. It's not the War of Armageddon. It's not the coming of the Messiah, nor the rapture of the church. It's not the immediate construction of the temple either. It's not that time, but everything is leading us to that time.
It's just another piece of the puzzle.
Another thing that leads to that time. But there are stories about life that would allow us to learn from it how to act. In the actual situation we find ourselves in.
Pero no significa que... Let's use that guide we have from the Bible. I mean, not just us as leaders.
It's not only that church leaders support it.
That's I'll go where it could be possible.
Change, use.
Like a line, isn't it?
Yes, because if it were used, we would be completely different. So let's go over a bit of history. Many years ago in this city of Jerusalem where we are now, to be precise, about 2,700 years ago, here in this city of Jerusalem, there was a king. That king's name was Hezekiah. The Bible tells us that at that time, Jerusalem was the capital of the territory of Judea, and Israel had its capital in Samaria.
Israel was the northern kingdom.
With Samaria. The king of Judah was Hezekiah, who had, do you remember the name of the king of Israel back then? Homus. Was it something like that? Os? What was his name?
Yeah, I'll find it soon. Go on, I'll look for it.
Okay. There was a king in Israel who ruled the northern kingdom, Hosea. There was a king, was it Hosea? Hosea, okay. Hosea was the king of the northern kingdom of Israel, and Hezekiah was the king of Judah, with its capital in the city of Jerusalem. This was after the period when Israel was divided in two, after David and Solomon.
David and Solomon.
They had left the kingdom, they stole and left. Well, that whole part of the story, right? Then different kings came.
From there, the story opens up and splits into parallel lines, and they continue in parallel. So whenever you read in the Bible that it says, because Hosea was in Judah, in Israel, and it tells you who was in the other kingdom and what year it was, so you realize that everything happens in parallel.
Exactly. Let's also always remember that the kings in Judah came from David's line. Of course. So they were from David's royal line, those who remained from the line of David. And those from Israel were from the different tribes that were already appointing different kings. But well, the truth is that this is it's very broad. Just to have some background, that's all, a small summary. Anyway, the Bible tells us that Hezekiah was young when he became king. He was 25 years old. It says he reigned for 29 years. And while he was reigning, as we said, at the same time something was happening with Hosea in Israel. Specifically in Israel's capital, Samaria. A king had come from what is today part of Syria. What was Persia? The Bible doesn't call it Persia. It calls him the king of... Where does it say he came from? Yes. Assyria. Because it was an entire region. It was the whole region of Assyria. It was big, but its capital specifically was Persia. And Persia was what is now part of Iran. Not all of Iran is Persia, just a part of it, okay? Up to that point, we're good. In short, there was an Assyrian king. Not the one almost everyone knows. There was another one who succeeded him named Samases. If I'm not mistaken, you can read it there yourselves.
Wait, I almost remembered, but it slipped away. They had so many names.
Yeah, a lot of names. You'll read it there. It's at the beginning. A king. And then it says that he goes and conquers Israel. And then what he does is he takes all the people of Israel, I mean the city of Samaria, he besieges it. He besieges it for 3 years and then ends up conquering it. And that's where the kingdoms of Israel, I mean the 10 tribes of Israel, are expelled. What begins with the exile and they are taken to Assyria, okay?
The king was Salmanasar.
Salman-Ajar, I was close, huh? After this king, another king named Sennacherib succeeded him. That is, years went by, Sennacherib came, and Sennacherib was also a conqueror, so he decided to conquer what was left to conquer in this whole region up to the territory of Egypt. And to reach the territory of Egypt, he needed to conquer this place. Remember that there was a good relationship between Egypt and the territory of Judah because Judah was basically a province. Judah had, for a time, become a province. There was a king of the territory of Judah who had even been ruled by Egypt. There was a relationship. So this area had to be weakened in order to conquer Egypt, and that's when Sennacherib comes in. He goes to a city in the southern region of Israel called Lachish, and it says that from there he begins to threaten the king who was right here where we are sitting now in the city of Jerusalem. Hezekiah was somewhere around here. His entire entourage, all his people were behind him. And they heard that he was coming to besiege them. And it was the same system they used in the north. Besieging them meant surrounding them, surround the city, and leave them without food. Without food, so that no one...
Also, when a city is under siege, all the gates are automatically closed. No one can enter and no one can leave. That means merchants coming from outside can't enter and people inside can't leave either.
Exactly.
They can't go to the fields at all.
Okay, now as an aside, about a month and a half ago, we placed an order on Amazon.
Ah, yes.
And it hasn't arrived.
It still hasn't arrived, yes.
In fact, if you want to place an order today, it tells you unfortunately, due to the conflict in a high-risk region, we can't ship. So we're kind of under siege, right? Because people can't come either. Now, to openly go sightseeing. They can't walk around, visit, or get off a plane. Maybe that changes today. In the next few days, yes, but today, as we're making this video, not so much.
It's like we were isolated.
Exactly.
Looking at the flight paths, it was the same. You could tell they were isolated since no planes were coming or going.
In fact, the Israelis themselves this Passover couldn't leave the country for vacation like they do every holiday when millions travel abroad. Instead, they had to stay in vacation in their own country. So we were literally under siege.
So to speak, yes.
Like 2,700 years ago, just like the Bible tells us, okay? So, Israel already lived through these years before and experienced exactly the same thing. With the same region.
With the same region, the same way of thinking.
The same back then. We're gonna lay siege to them, and the siege strategy was to weaken the economy. Today, the exact same thing is happening to weaken Israel's economy. So what had happened? In short, more briefly, the king had arrived and told his team. There are some very strange names among all these people, but there's one with the name AA. I don't remember it. You'll see it later on. He was the king's spokesman, Ram Ikran.
Ram the Rab, that's it.
He was the spokesperson, and the Bible even reminds us that he had blasphemed the name of God because he said, well, as often happens today, God told me. That he said, God told me this. And you know what? The interesting thing is that God listens. So you have to be very careful when you say God tells me, because God listens. And he says that God told him. This one blasphemed. I wouldn't want to be counted among those God says blasphemed.
At one point, he says, God told me that's it. And then God says that this one blasphemed.
Yes, but why? Because that one, in some way, now let's remember the story, but this Hezekiah kind of let himself get confused.
Yes, he listened to his voice instead of having listened to God's voice.
So what had happened? It turns out that here, this Hezekiah obviously didn't want his people to fall into the same, how do you say? Into the same future, into the same situation that happened to his neighbor, Samad.
To the people of Judah, yes.
So what he wanted was to protect
His people, the people of Israel, trying to do what was right. Like always, he started taking steps, making desperate last-ditch moves.
Yes,
In his own thoughts.
in his own strength.
And then he started to say, let's look for a quick, easy solution. Let's get all this conflict out of here. So let's ask this Sennacherib what he wants. And then this Ramesses says to him, okay, Sennacherib wants this. Let's make a deal. Let's make a peace agreement for 14 days. Let's make a deal, he says. Bring me silver and gold, okay? And that's it. And then Hezekiah, of course, he thought he could trust these people. And he says he took all the gold from the temple. He took all the money. Remember, the temple's gold belonged to the people.
Exactly.
That they had donated. They brought tithes. They brought offerings. So this guy takes all the people's money and says, let's silence the enemy. And then he goes and gives the money to the enemy. And what happens when he gives the money to the enemy?
Wait, let's read it, okay? What you're saying about this agreement,
Yes.
it's in 2 Kings 18. 14, halfway through verse 14. And it says, and the king of Assyria imposed on Hezekiah, king of Judah, 300 talents of silver and 30 talents of gold. Therefore Hezekiah gave all the silver that was found in the house of the Lord and in the treasures of the royal house. Then Hezekiah removed the gold from the doors of the temple of the Lord and from the doorposts that he himself, King Hezekiah, had covered with gold. And he gave it to the king of Assyria.
And what happened to the king of Assyria?
And then here it says, then the king of Assyria sent against King Hezekiah the Tartan, the Rabsaris, and the Rabsaris, with a great army from Lachish against Jerusalem.
In other words, the agreement was not respected.
It was neither respected nor fulfilled.
Exactly. It wasn't like, thanks for the money, I'm leaving and letting you live in peace in your city and keep prospering and plant your vineyard and everything else. Instead, he said, no, I'm not satisfied with this. I want hostages. Don't you think we're reliving the same chapter from over 2,000 years ago? He said, I want hostages. Nowadays, what is Iran saying? I want compensation for what you just did to me. What's more, I want to keep producing uranium. What's more, I want to keep doing this, and this, and this, and this, and this. I want to remain in power. And what's happening now is that Israel is not alone in the negotiation. And then another player appears.
Interesting.
Who negotiates directly with the enemy? Israel is left out of the deal. But the one who helps you is not to blame. The blame lies with the one who allows himself to be helped. What did you mean?
No, I wanted to tell you that no, it's not relevant anymore because you're right. This is more important. Maybe now there's no need to look for whose fault it was or whose fault it wasn't. Well, we need to ask ourselves what would have happened if we had done this or if we had done that in order to recalculate and to be able to see where we made a mistake so we don't make the same mistake again. But anyway, it's already done.
Yes, we have to make a sharp turn and go back to the scriptures ultimately. Because look, this story continues as follows. It tells us that Hezekiah gets somewhat sad because it's like his plan to reach an agreement didn't work. I made an agreement with people who don't keep their word. This agreement, this process didn't work. And then that person comes and attacks me. Not only is he attacking me, he's also asking me for hostages. Not only is he asking me for hostages, but he's also asking me, he gives me, because he also gives me. He says he's gonna give me horses, but he's also saying, give me the riders. He had to give me hostages and riders.
So who was going to stay in the country? Or they didn't have money, they didn't have people because he had taken hostages. And also, if he gives him riders, what does that mean? They're soldiers because who used to ride back then? They were the soldiers.
Now notice the cunning of the king through this spokesman he had. He asks him, do you still trust Egypt? Israel, and whom do I trust? You guys write down who you trust in Israel today, right? Because Israel at that time, no, not Israel, sorry, Judah at that time trusted in Egypt. Because it was, and he says to him that Egypt you trust in is like a reed, he says, right? That ends up breaking.
If you lean your hand on it, it goes through your hand. Yes, you hurt yourself.
Exactly. So in the end, don't trust in it. And all of this is what this Sennacherib is telling Hezekiah. And what's more, that's where this Rabshakeh uses it and says, Jehovah sent me. Your God is the one who sent me. The one you had everything cleaned up for and then told people to worship this God here again. That's the one who's sending me, telling me to do this. Why does confusion arise then?
Of course.
Because how can it be possible?
God speaks to you.
Go to the neighbor we have behind us.
It's confusing because in the end, God speaking to my enemy is one thing. Exactly.
Exactly. And that's when he finally sends him towards something wise. And he stops, goes to the room where he could consult God, and that's where he repents. And when he repents, he asks for forgiveness and changes his sackcloth garments. When it says sackcloth, it represents complete repentance. And also remember that when he was talking about this Ramsates, he was speaking in a language that people understood. And then King Ezekiel's leaders tell him, don't speak in that language because people understand. Let's speak in another language. And he says no and stands in a higher place. And he starts speaking louder so that all the people can hear. Saying your king is deceiving you as if trying to turn people against him. And the people did not turn against the king.
No, even though it was so tense, the people did what Ezekiel had asked. They did not answer him a word. And the people, I don't know if they were afraid or not.
But they didn't say anything. Yes, so they did their part. Finally, Ezekiel repents and asks the Lord for forgiveness. And then comes the word of the prophet Isaiah, who tells him, go and tell Ezekiel the following. And then he ends up telling him that. We remember it, we have it there. Among the many things he tells him, it says here.
Look, 1920, then Isaiah. Well, 1919. Now then, O Jehovah our God, I beg you, save us from his hand so that all the kingdoms of the earth may know that you alone, Jehovah, are God. Then Isaiah, son of Amos, sent word to Hezekiah, saying, this is what Jehovah, the God of Israel, has said. What you asked me about Sennacherib, king of Assyria, I have heard it. This is the word that Jehovah has spoken concerning him. The virgin, daughter of Zion, despises you, she mocks you, behind you she shakes her head, and well,
etc. Yes, what it starts to say there. And finally, he ends up saying to him, he will not enter. That's where Isaiah stands on that wall. And he says he will not enter this place. Do not be afraid.
So he will not enter the city of
Jerusalem, and by the same way he came, that's the same way he will leave. And then it says that when this Ramesses returns to where Sennacherib was, who should have been in Lachish, he is no longer there. But he's in another place. Why? Because he went to fight, because Sennacherib had heard that the king of Ethiopia was coming to fight against him. And so he prepared himself for battle. And then this Ramesses goes back to Hezekiah again, telling him a bunch of other things. He says, listen to me, and all that. But Hezekiah had already spoken to Isaiah, saying that they are not going to enter. And that's where Hezekiah later in the book of Chronicles starts not an evacuation plan, but an action plan. Where he starts to say, let's divert the water. Exactly. That's something we started to do. Wonderful. Yes, the plan for, what do you call it? Like, let's manage the money well, right? And God ends up telling him through Isaiah something very interesting, that even after giving away all of God's money, God tells him, don't worry, because the first year,
See, not the second year either, but in the third year they can sow.
don't worry, that year you will finally eat what you have sown. It will be received.
But the previous 2 years, the first 2 years, they wouldn't lack food because they would eat what the land would give them.
Yes,
That's something great.
because actually,
When a war ended back then,
everything was destroyed. What God is saying is, don't panic. Don't get nervous. I am the provider. You will not lack anything to eat. As the Bible is always very clear, it says there will be no beggar who lacks bread, right? Nor have I seen the righteous forsaken, nor a beggar who has to beg for bread because he lacks it. I don't recall the exact words, but that's the idea, right? Ultimately, the God of Israel, look, is so perfect in everything that he ends up saying all of that, right? And then what ends up happening to Sennacherib is really sad. But it was what he deserved for wanting to mess with God's people. Let's read it.
yes, let's read it. It's in the same chapter, 19 2 Kings 19. 36-37, which says, Then Sennacherib, king of Assyria, left and returned to Nineveh, where he stayed. And it happened that while he was worshipping in the temple of Nisroch his god, Adramelech and Sharezer, his sons, struck him down with the sword and fled to the land of Ararat, and Esarhaddon, his son, reigned in his place, that is, his own sons.
They killed their own father.
Their own father?
Exactly, and they took his place. But look, what's also interesting about this, which brings us to today, is that the same branch from the same tree remained.
Yes, it wasn't completely eliminated, Najon. That root still remained.
To this day,
Thank you.
to this day, it's still exactly the same. But what was the solution back then? Which lasted for many years, because it was for many years. In fact, a lot of Jews stayed living there. Later, because the Bible tells us that Nebuchadnezzar comes later and ends up taking Jerusalem, many Jews stayed living there and made that territory their home.
Exactly. They had already adapted, they had learned the language.
They may well have gotten married. That's why there are many Jews who live there. In Iran, in the territory of Persia. Many Jews continue living in Iraq and throughout the region.
Because they had already started families, raised generations there, and had already been living there. Because back then, it was possible. There was a time of peace, and exactly.
God had brought about a significant period of peace. Not like that temporary one. In other words, that temporary situation Hezekiah tried to create may or may not be like what's being attempted in our day. Hezekiah?
No.
Hezekiah, the one who, what Hezekiah tried to do, offering gold and silver, saying they'd be like twins. Yes.
That agreement,
That agreement. That agreement didn't work.
that way of solving it, exactly.
Hiding it under the rug didn't work. But the only solution is with divine intervention. So Israel has to understand that Egypt is not going to help them. Title it, Who is Egypt?
Who is Egypt?
Call it France, call it England, call it the United States, call it whatever you want. Help doesn't come from Egypt, help comes from the God of Israel. So that's when the government and the people of Israel will at some point look up, and Zechariah reminds us, and they will see the one they pierced, and they will mourn bitterly.
There's still time before that happens.
There's still time before that. But everything we're experiencing is leading us to those inevitable days. But at the same time, they're comforting.
Why comforting?
Because we will be reunited with the one who paid the price. He will come for those who believe in him. So all of us who believe in him must continue to have peace. And just as he acted in the past, he also continues to act in the present.
Yes, that's right, Edu. Sometimes we are, because I imagine that Hezekiah must have been a little confused for not having asked the Lord, or maybe for having distanced himself a bit. He must have obviously been a little confused about what he had to do. That's why he made the mistakes he made. But the most important thing is not only that he truly repented, but also that God listened to him. It's not that God said, oh, get out of here because you disobeyed me. God listened to him. And we're talking about the very moment when the city was under siege. I mean, he was between a rock and a hard place. And that's when he realized he had to turn back to God. So that also helps us personally, not just for the country.
No, salvation is individual. We all have to return and trust in him and be with him alone. Our trust is in him. That's the end of it.
It's not wrong for other people to support us and help us, but our faith, our trust must be placed in the Lord. So God can use other people. I'm not saying he can't, but only as long as our focus is on God. Yes.
Well, how about we continue toward the wall?
The tour?
Yes, let's go toward the wall. And probably, I don't know what's happening there. It could be a matter of time, but possibly these are 2 videos and not one as we had planned. So if this is a second video, stick around because we're heading to the wall now. And well, let's keep exploring.
All right, let's go.
Well, Lord, what a difference, right? And well, everyone who's walking there with us, we just did a quick, easy route along this same path we took the other day. The difference is that the other day we were exactly over there.
Where that little man is sitting.
Yes, see, but here are the letters.
It's right where that fast camera stopped, right there. That's the place where we've been, on those little stairs.
That's where Torah is. Exactly.
And now Torah.
There. In fact, these people have a lot of material in Spanish. But remember that they still don't know the Messiah. Yes, exactly. We're here.
In what is called the Reshabata.
What would the word Rejabata mean? Like an esplanade? The beach.
Like a plaza.
The plaza, yes, like... Yes, because it comes from the word rejo, which means street. Would it be like the area, the zone? What did you just say? Plaza.
Plaza?
The plaza, not a playground.
With games, but the plaza where people gather?
Yes. Well, look, there are those who remember and follow the videos and have been watching us. At one point, we made these Israel Unfiltered posts, and we were in the office showing the wall in real time. And so from the wall, you could see that image we had there without people. You could always see people here in yellow helmets working. That's where they worked. They were the ones moving everything around. And look at how many people there are today. To think that just days ago, how long was it? Hours ago? Days, just hours ago.
Here it was completely empty.
There was nothing. There weren't any people at all.
There were only birds or bats.
We didn't know who was there, exactly. They come here too. Look, the media. Even to show the full extent of the change, right? That's what we're reporting to.
They're reporting on them.
It's like as soon as people were given the freedom to pray, they ran out to pray. And here they are.
Shall we get a little closer?
Yes.
Now, Lore, aside from Hebrew, there's a lot of English. You hear a lot of English. Could they be tourists? Could they be family members who got stranded?
People who stayed on here, that could be it too, yes.
Because we remember that the airport is open and people keep coming. And from the moment the announcement was made, the sites, the parks, national parks were also opened. And everything went back to normal. Everything went back to normal. Everything we're seeing here is normal.
There are still a lot of people, especially those who live, many religious people who live, for example, in Jerusalem and on the outskirts, who speak English.
So also...
And it's not because they live here. Not everyone learns the language. So some of them keep speaking the same language as in their home country.
We just focused on continuing to speak our language, right?
Yes. What we just focused on, where we stopped, was the women's prayer area. And this one, which we're going to approach now, is the men's area.
What?
Well, the good thing, Edu, that I want to emphasize is that it wasn't only when they said it was opening up that we entered this time of peace. Not only are cars leaving and parking at the shopping centers, but there are also people who choose to come here and continue praying.
We need to intercede before God from their perspective based on the light they have. And remember that God is merciful, and with Him you don't have to come. How do you say it? You don't have to come with things. You have to come with an open heart, and for anything else, He will listen to you. So we pray for Israel in the coming days.
Exactly, yes. Let's see what awaits us.
Iran needs Jesus. Iraq needs Jesus. Syria, all this darkness that covers this whole region, everyone needs the Messiah. Israel needs the Messiah, no doubt. But the question is, which we still ask ourselves to this day, what will happen when these two sisters come to their end? Will it come down to two sisters? Will it be fulfilled? Will there be an extension? Will there be a peace that lasts for years, or will the conflict return again?
Very good question. But for now,
No.
we can't know for sure. Thank you.
That's it for today's video.
Exactly, yes.
See you on the next adventure. We send our regards.
Thank you for joining us, and I hope you enjoyed it and that you were able to recognize these two routes we have taken. During the time of tension and now in this time of peace.
Exactly. Greetings to everyone. See you in the next video. Bye.